Anong balita, Ami?
Binabantayan namin yung sagutan ni Foreign Affairs Secretary Teddy Boy Locsin and Secretary Duque.
Because kanina, yun ang headline kanina ng Philippines. Nakita ko nga, Mr. Locsin is saying that somebody dropped the ball again, this time with regards to the order of 50 million syringes.
Yes, nagdi-deny si Secretary Duque at sabi niya, tweet ng tweet ito.
Pero ito, yung mas malaking bumulaga sa mga tao tonight, over the weekend, itong balita na nangyari sa BDO, no? Yung we begin tonight, talking about this, illegal money transfers from BDO to Union Bank, and supposedly from Union Bank, pinambili ng cryptocurrency. And of course, now people are worried about not only about their money, they're worried about our banking system as well and their apps. So we begin tonight with cybersecurity advocate and Manila Bulletin Technology Editor Art Samaniego. Also with us is Bayan Muna Representative Ferdinand Gaite. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Robbie.
Good
Good evening, Ami.
Si Congressman Gaite wants an investigation into this. But if you don't mind, Congressman, umpisahan ko kay Art. Kasi kanina kausap ko si Art sa The Big Story. So I want to revisit some of those points here. But I'll start with the basic thing again, Art. Ito naman yung tanong lahat ng tao. Ano bang naintindihan natin? Anong hindi pa natin naintindihan sa nangyari?
Ang nakikita lang natin ngayon na meron talagang system compromise. So, kasi ang sinasabi sa atin na merong ganitong pangyayari dahil naging biktima ng phishing yung mga account holders. Pero lahat ng mga information na nakuha ko, lahat ng mga proof ngayon na nakikita ko, hindi ito isang phishing attempt, kundi ito ay isang system compromise. Ibig sabihin, napasok ng mga magnanakaw, napasok ng mga cyber criminals ang system ng isang bangko. At inamin naman ng BDO na for replacement na yung old system nila, na 10 years old na yung system nila. So pwede isa to sa mga dahilan kung bakit mas madaling napasok yung system ng bangko nila.
Art, linawin ko lang. When you say phishing at hindi to phishing, ibig sabihin hindi ito yung nautukan na naibigay mo yung mga private data mo, password mo. So hindi ito yung mga users na nauto.
Hindi siya phishing expedition.
Ibig sabihin ngayon yung sistema mismo ng bangko ang nakompromiso.
Tama. Kasi pag sinabi mong phishing, hindi kasalanan ng bangko kung nauto ka at nagbigay ka ng information at binigay mo yung login at password mo. Hindi kasalanan ng bangko yan. Kasalanan mo yan. Kasi naniwala ka doon sa phishing o doon sa email, nag-click ka at nagbigay ka ng personal information. Kung pinadaan siya sa text, ang tawag sa kanya smishing. Pinadaan siya sa text, SMS. At kung tinawagan ka naman at sinabing, kailangan malaman ko yung login and password mo, ang tawag yan, phishing, using voice. Pero ito, walang ganun nangyari sa mga account holders. So sinundan ko yung mga account holders na nagrereklamo. Naghanap ako ng average computer user, yung average yung knowledge, saka yung mga advanced knowledge nila sa computer. So nakakita ako ng systems administrator, nakakita ako ng IT professional, at nakakita ako ng cybersecurity engineer na naging biktima. So tinanong ko sila, anong nangyari? Ayun, wala silang kinlik, wala silang na-receive na OTP, basta na lang nabawasan yung bank account nila.
Okay.
Pero Art, kung compromise yung mismong system, why didn't the perpetrators get away with more than what they were reported to have gotten away with? I mean, why not 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, 100 million, assuming na hindi nga umabot sa ganun? Kasi if you had access to the system already, why sell for a few hundred?
Parang bumabaybay ka lang dun sa maximum withdrawal per day, di ba?
Kasi ang maximum withdrawal transaction na magagawa mo kay BDO, buti na lang 50,000 lang. Yun lang maximum. Naging problema nitong iba pa na malalaman mo na system compromise talaga. Kasi ang 50,000 na limit, bakit umabot ng 100,000? Bakit pinayagan na pwede kang mag-transact ng 500 ng another 50,000? So ito yung may limit. Ang ginagawa ng mga kriminal na to, nangungulekta sa masa, nangungulekta dun sa mga depositor ng BDO, pinapasa nila sa Union Bank. dahil ang Union Bank, ang limit niya is 500,000 at pwede mo bang baguhin? Sabi nila, hanggang 10 million daw yung pwede mong i-transact. Kasi ang Union Bank, isa siyang very crypto-friendly bank. Kaya ito yung dito pinapasa sa kanya.
Okay.
So Congressman, kayo, you are planning an investigation. Meron rin bang yung preliminary studies kung anong nangyari? Kasi nagkakaproblema ngayon yung bangko. Ano yung may nabalitaan na ba kayo kung anong posibleng nangyari sa system ng bangko? Kasi baka mangyari din sa iba.
Tama yun, Ami, no? Right now, from the side of the users, yun pala nga narinig namin, no? Na over the weekend nga, tulad na nabanggit, nagkaroon ng several complaints, no? Na nabawasan yung kanilang savings, yung kanilang bank accounts. Pero kung ano yung actual na nangyari, then we will have to rely on these experts to the art, no? Who can give us a better picture of what's really happening. Nakakagulat dahil BDO is, I understand, one of the biggest banks now, no, sa Pilipinas. And you would presume that they will have the highest form of security. Considering that, di ba, yung bank transactions ngayon, nagtaasan yung kanilang fees pa. So we're actually paying them for these services. And yet, nakita nga natin na parang kung totoo nga sabi ni Art na 10 years na yung system, di ba kahit naman yung mga ibang applications, almost yearly, they have to update their systems, then dapat they should invest on improving their security, especially now, no, that the criminals are becoming more, yung mas mahusay na ngayon ng mga cyber criminals. Nakakatakot rin considering that's December, many of the employees receive their year-end bonuses and other benefits. So, isipin mo na lang, no, yung Paskong ganito ang problema, I don't know how long BDO will settle supposed losses of the customers.
Okay.
Art, yung initial advice ng BDO palitan daw yung password muna in the meantime. You think that will be enough? Kasi pinasok yung system mismo ng bangko. You think
So, yun yung problema. Pag napasok yung system ng bangko, kahit anong palit mo ng password, useless yan. Kasi yung mga cyber criminals nandun na sa loob. At pwede na silang makapasok at will. So yung solution na yun, pwedeng mangyari yun, pwedeng it's a good solution if naging biktima ka because of phishing attacks. Pero pag system compromise to, yun yung pinagdududahan namin, and all evidence na ngayon nagpo-point na system compromise siya. So walang magagawa, ma'am, yung solution nila.
Art, ipapasok ko doon yung sa kabilang banda naman. Everybody's talking about BDO, but I was asking you kanina, yung Union Bank, because itong si Mark D. Nagoyo, di ba? Even Union Bank is saying, obviously, that is a fake account. Wala kaming pangalan na ganyan na account. But then, does that raise questions about yung tinatawag nilang know your client systems ng banko, yung KYC na tinatawag? I mean, how could there be a name to which the money is transferred, and then the bank itself says na that name is not actually associated with any account, or hiwalay ba yung transfer sa actual name nung bank account?
Ang ginagamit kasi nila, InstaPay. Sa InstaPay, irrelevant yung pangalan. Kailangan lang sakto yung account number. So kung titignan mo yung, I monitor 20 account numbers na ginagamit ng mga cyber criminals. So, Mark D. Nagoyo, parang 4 yung account na ginagamit niya. Meron pang GDE, DBD, GHD na pangalan nakalagay doon. Pero inalaw yun kasi ang InstaPay, yun lang ang hinihingi.
So yung InstaPay, hiwalay siya doon sa actual system ng KYC.
Yes.
No? But does
Hiwalay
that
siya.
mean that if the KYC is if the know your client protocol is not compromised here, it still means, kahit hindi pa natin alam, it still means that that account is tied to a name that is known to the bank.
Correct. Oo. So, pwedeng matrace ng bank to.
Okay.
This account number, sinong gumagamit, pwedeng matrace niya ng Union Bank.
Okay, last question. Natitrace na natin doon, di ba? Nabalita nga, ginawang Bitcoin. Ginawa raw cryptocurrency. Pagka nandun na yan sa blockchain, kaya pa bang habulin yung impormasyon na yan?
Ang problema nito, pag nakita mo yung account o na-trace mo yung tao, ang duda ko dito, baka money mule. So, binayaran yung mga tao para magamit yung account nila.
Okay.
Sulusot na yung mga kriminal. Binili pa nila ngayon ng Bitcoin. Pagkabili ng Bitcoin, malinis na yung pera. Pwede na dalhin kahit saan yun. Convert mo to US dollars, convert mo to other crypto. So, walang paraan para mabawi ito.
Teka, nasa Bitcoin na kayo, nasa video pa rin ako eh. Ako, napaka-basic. Kasi I think all of us have video accounts eh. If changing your password is no guarantee that you'll protect yourself, then what do we do as consumers? I mean, di ba? What do we do? You just pray? Ganon?
Nung nakikita ko na may nangyayaring activity na ganito, so I immediately inform my relatives to deactivate their online banking access. After that, I inform the editors of Manila Bulletin, I inform the employees ng Manila Bulletin, meron ba kayong video account? Please monitor. There's an activity going on. Friday to. Tapos, I attempted to look for contact sa BDO. Wala, di naman nila sinagot yung email ko eh. So, Saturday, ayun na nga, pumutok na yung Saturday. Ginawa nila yung Saturday kasi timing. Alam nila na alam ng mga cyber criminals na walang technical support ng Saturday, walang matatawagan, ang mga complaints aayusin yan sa Monday. Sa Monday na. So, may timing sila. Magaling yung timing nila. So, pwede natin gawin ngayon, pero may assurance naman na ang BDO na they will return our losses. So, dapat yung mga tao mapanatag na ang loob. Pero yun nga, ang in-advise ko that time is to deactivate your online banking access na pwede mo namang gawin. Tapos yung transfer, dalhin mo sa zero. And after that, kung gagamitin mo lang, saka mo i-activate ulit kung magkano yung kailangan mo.
So, kung you never registered, kapareho ko simula nung nag-video ako, hindi ko ginagalaw yung ano ko doon eh. Kung hindi ka nag-register kahit kailan, you are less vulnerable or you are still vulnerable?
Pag meron kang online banking, ma'am, you're still vulnerable. Ang hindi namin nakikita ngayon yung mga passbook only accounts. Mukhang hindi sila vulnerable pero hindi din kami sure.
Okay.
Congressman Gaite, based po sa ito, sa mga initial na binabanggit dito ni Art, ano po yung mga pwedeng puntiryahin ng batas?
Well, tama, no? I think pare-pareho yung concern natin. And alam natin yung banking system relies on trust. You're giving them you're giving your money, they will hold on to it, and when you need it, pwede mo makuha. So, with that trust, they have to set up a system which will be, sabi nga nila, no, dapat foolproof yung system. So hopefully, no, sa investigation based sa final natin, makita natin ano yung mga pwedeng mga measures that banks have to comply with to ensure that the minimum requirements mag-comply. So nakakatakot kasi parang sinabi, anong gagawin natin? Magdasal? The banking system with this itong nangyaring ito will be put into question. Sino pang will go into banking if yung trust mo sa system na to hindi ka panatag. So we hope, no, and we ask, no, all experts together with probably the ICT, meron silang cybercrime prevention unit doon, and other technical experts, no, to help us in crafting measures to improve the existing system or especially banking.
Pero,
Alam natin, ngayon,
Opo.
parang magpa-passbook ka, parang wala na atang gumagamit to Art eh. But, di ba, that's the yung pinakalumang sistema. But because of what's happening now, baka mababalik na naman tayo sa Stone Age kung ganyan na naman nangyayari sa digital banking system.
Ako po, very, very, very basic question. Sapat na ba yung assurance ng bangko na maibabalik nila yung perang makuha sa'yo? Kasi from my understanding is may limit lang din yung insurance ng bangko for your accounts in case something happens to your account. PDIC, if it still exists, kasi matagal na yun, if it still exists, will only
Meron pa
return
rin,
so
meron pa rin.
much.
Ang
I
fraud
believe
hindi
it's half a
kasama sa
million.
PDIC, hindi siya insured.
I'm sorry?
Hindi.
Hindi insured. Hindi siya insured pag ganito.
Ganun?
Hindi kasama sa PDIC.
Teka, sige, balikan natin yan. So, what does that mean? what does that mean?
So dapat so ako 'di ba ang bangko kasi kailangan ng tao ng trust 'yan eh.
Yeah.
So ito ang pinaglalaban na lang natin, ang inaasahan ko na lang. This is a very big company, under siya ng SM Group of Companies, 'di ba? So ako naniniwala ako na doon sa promise ng BDO na gagawin nila yun, na ibalik yung mga pera na nawala dahil sa mga cyber criminals na to.
Pero Art, are you aware of a similar case anywhere in the world? Kasi at
Ay
least,
ma'am, laging nangyayari na nako-compromise yung mga financial institutions. So laging may mga ganitong pangyayari.
pero yung ganito kasi, alam naman natin yun, sa US Federal Reserve nga nahack ng milyon-milyon.
Oo.
Hindi ba?
Pero pag sa US pag ganito, wala na. Tiklop na yung mga banks natin pag nangyari ito sa kanila.
Okay.
So,
So may
pero
template.
yun lang ma'am, ang positive thing dito, after the cybersecurity incident, I believe that BDO will be the safest bank to put your money in kasi ipo-fortify na nila security nila because of this incident.
But what about our law enforcement agencies? We do have cybercrime units now at the NBI government. We have a DICT and so on. All in all, yung bang sistema ng gobyerno at saka yung mga galabay ng gobyerno with all the trainings they've also gotten, are we capable of doing the forensics here?
Yes, we have a very capable team of cybersecurity group of PNP and the NBI. So, kaya nilang makagawa ng forensics. Pero ito bagong-bago, habang nag-uusap tayo kanina, tina-target ang mga account holders ng PNB. Philippine National Bank. At nakagawa na ang mga scammers ng website ng PNB, pinasok nila ang isang municipality sa Panay, banate.gov.ph, gumawa ng folder doon at ginawang fake na PNB login page. Pag nag-login sila doon, kukolektahin yung information nila.
Okay. Pero teka, linawin natin to. Wala pang tinatamaan. So basically what you're saying, some hackers created a fake website to try to mine data. Pero wala pang na-hack, wala pa namang nothing like what happened to BDO.
Sana wala pa. So malalaman na lang natin to pag meron na nagreklamo. Kaya dapat gawin ng government agency na to, i-down kagad yung site.
Okay, but ito, Art, quick tips. We're actually out of time. We're actually running over time for this segment. But kasi when you say gumawa ng fake site, di ba? Tapos pati yung URL na nagmumukhang ganon. So, ano ngayon ang titingnan natin? How do we even know kung ano yung totoo? Pati yung email address. Parang tama naman, di ba? So, paano na malalaman? What are some basic tips that we can still spot a fake?
So, yung mga links, pwede nilang i-mask. Tawag mask, itatago nila. Sabihin nila talaga na pnb.com.ph. So, ang gagawin mo, wag mo i-click pag na-receive mo yun sa email. You hover the mouse on top of the, top of the link.
Yeah.
And then, tignan mo yun sa lower left corner.
Lalabas
Makikita mo yung tunay na link doon.
Sa lower left corner ng browser.
Yung browser.
Okay.
Pag hindi PNB ang nakalagay, gaya nito, Banati nakalagay, pag hinover mo, that's a scam. That's a phishing site. Kaya mag-ingat po tayo sa mga to. Ang tatalino ng mga kriminal na to.
Okay, sundutin ko pa rin yan ha. Paano kung sa smartphone? Wala namang hover sa smartphone. Either didikitan yun, either mapipindot ko yun o hindi. Di ba? So ano yung style doon?
So, i-press mo. Wag mo i-click. I-press long mo. Makikita mo. So ito yung panawagan namin sa mga bangko saka sa mga opisina. Sa panahon ngayon, wag na kayong gagawa ng promo na may link na i-click ng mga tao para pag may nagpadala ng ganun, alam na kagad namin na mga kriminal to nagpadala. So wag na kayong sana wala na mga promo na click here.
Ako, dinidelete ko na lang.
Yes.
Delete.
Oh, sa medyas ka na nalagay yung pera.
Okay. Sige. Well, okay. Art Samaniego, tech expert po ng Manila Bulletin. Maraming salamat. And Congressman
Ferdinand Gaite.
Maraming salamat po.
Thank you
so
po.
much.
Ingat po.
Please stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back.
Welcome back to the Chiefs on One News, and with us now is Comelec spokesman, Director James Jimenez. Magandang gabi, Director Jimenez, and thank you for joining us. And welcome back.
Good evening, Sir Ed, Ma'am Ann.
At si Robbie
And
po.
Sir Rob.
Yes, sir. Sir, well, siyempre, usapang election po tayo ngayon na kanina, the Comelec rejected all interventions filed in the first case. I'm not sure if it's the cancellation or disqualification of Bongbong Marcos. But at any rate,
It's the cancellation
the cancellation, yung pinakauna talaga, yung kay Father Buenafe. What does this mean? Ano pong implikasyon nito doon sa mismong kaso na petition na sinampa?
Wala naman po. It just means that the case will continue with the original petitioners at hindi makakapasok yung mga basically latecomers, no? Kasi naman ang esensya ng intervention na sinasabi, meaning to say, they want in on the action, no? And that's been denied them.
Mhm. And it's been rejected. They've been rejected because of the 25-day deadline, I suppose, for the filing of
No,
cancellations.
Not really. It's just that to add more petitioners who are alleging essentially the same thing would
Okay.
unnecessarily complicate the case, I think.
Okay, so it was... Sige, Ami.
Okay ka na? No, I'm curious about your coordination with YouTube, to verify the
Awesome.
accounts of candidates. Kumusta na? What's the progress there? Ano bang exactly? Medyo naguguluhan yata yung iba kung ano yung requirement for them to verify.
Opo, hindi kasi yung ibang mga netizens medyo tumitigil sila dun sa point na sinabi ng YouTube community guidelines na kung meron kang 100,000, ma-verify ka. If they had scrolled down a little further, they would have seen that YouTube itself says that from time to time, they will proactively verify an account even if it has less than 100,000 if they are known outside of YouTube. And yan po ang kumbaga pinaka-accommodation sa atin ng YouTube, no? I mean, that's what we're using basically. Since official candidates ang mga pinag-uusapan natin dito, they can actually get verified. No? So, yung fear ng mga tao na kailangan mo ng 100,000, I think that's overblown. It's also fueled by the fact that people who keep talking about it, especially online, they don't do their research naman. No? I mean, they're very quick to point out that it's in the guidelines. Yeah, it's in the guidelines, as well as the fact that YouTube can proactively verify even if you have less than 100,000. Pero ma'am, just to put it in the proper context, no, medyo nagkakalimutan kasi tayo that Google isn't even accepting ads anymore, right? So itong verification requirement is for placing ads on YouTube. So basically, kung hindi ka verified, it doesn't really mean anything like any extra special kasi hindi ka naman talaga makakapag-ads right? So the verification requirement is to allow you to place ads on YouTube during the campaign period. But since Google isn't accepting ads anymore, it doesn't really matter, right? So hindi na po yun issue sa tingin namin.
So are there any new initiatives to monitor campaigning using social media? Meron ba kayong mga
Nakabantay po kami as far as Comelec is concerned, mostly sa spending, no, sa paggastos. Bagaman tumutulong kami, or at least we're trying to take steps to curb misinformation, that's really beyond the ability of Comelec to do anything about at this point. Kasi ang misinformation, hindi naman yan unique sa elections lamang, no? I mean, that is a bigger problem. Ngayon, medyo mainit sa mata kasi halalan nga, but there is a bigger problem pagdating sa fake news. Tumutulong yung initiative namin to require verification, but that's not the complete solution, I think.
Sir, so far I think you've been talking about ads in the direct sense of the word. Ibig sabihin talagang nag-harapan na ads, na advertisements na vote for so and so and so. But I suppose a big chunk of the expenses and as well a big chunk of the following is not with regard to ads, but to the softer sell of using, for example, so-called influencers or third-party people who may not necessarily have an obvious direct line or direct link with candidates. How can we monitor and regulate that kind of spending and that kind of advertising?
Well, if you're an influencer who's really pushing for a particular candidate, you will of course be required to submit your contract and your receipts. No, that will be for those that are obviously in a contractual relationship. Doon naman sa mga hindi sila obvious na merong contractual relationship, mga taong hindi mo alam kung bayad o hindi. What the Comelec does is it really observes the behavior of these websites to see if there is a pattern of campaigning for a particular candidate, no? And then that might be called into question whether or not those services have to be paid for. But again, this is all monitoring after the fact.
Yes, sir. But isn't that a bit of a gray line? Kasi a person can always claim na hindi mo na ako binayaran, talagang true believer ako. And I suppose that is going to be used a lot. That kind of argument is going to be used a lot.
That's expected, and you're right. It is a gray line, but then again, you do remember that there is no law existing right now, and Comelec cannot conjure up a law out of thin air. We can only operate within the authorities that's available to us right now.
Okay, let's go back to what is clear, kahit hindi sa gray area, doon pa rin sa mga platforms. Maybe kwento nyo kami ng konti how that came to be, yung Google decision to not accept political ads, and then and what was the intervention there, and what's the possibility that that kind of an arrangement can extend to all other digital platforms, including social media?
But unfortunately, I don't think Comelec can take any sort of credit for Google's decision not to accept ads, right? I mean, this is not something that the Comelec asked for directly, although it has been mentioned, of course, in various meetings with various platforms. We've also spoken to Facebook before and mentioned that that a ban on ads on Facebook would be a great help to curb the sort of proliferation of fake news, right? But so far, Facebook has not done that. Twitter, in the past itself, on its own initiative, banned ads as well. TikTok has also banned political ads. So it's not an entirely new idea, this banning of political ads during the election season.
But you're saying essentially that while you can share that sentiment and even express it to them, there is a line you cannot cross?
Well, they're not Philippine companies, so they're not companies that we can oblige to do what we want, right? At most, we can urge cooperation and enter into cooperative agreements with them, but we cannot oblige them to go one way or the other. This is evidenced by the fact that even when we have to take down fake news, we go through their community guidelines, not Philippine laws. Philippine laws inform their decision, yes, but ultimately the decision is made based on that platform's community guidelines.
Director, what about actual physical ads? Kasi ang dami ko na nakikita ngayon eh. Kasi
Yes.
sa mga poste, sa mga walkways, mga streamers, and they're openly campaigning for nilalagay ng pwesto ron. Talagang it's not Merry Christmas lang or pagpabakuna kayo. Hindi lang ganun eh. Talagang
Actually.
na. Wala bang rule against that? Can you go after them?
Actually, hindi na po sila nagtatago ngayon kasi na-realize nila na wala nang pangangailangan para magtago. No? Yung decision ng Korte Suprema sa Piñera versus Comelec is very much in operation, and it says that lahat ng pwede mo ipagbawal sa kandidato, pwede mo lang ipagbawal sa simula ng campaign period. And they're taking advantage of that. So there is no law, ma'am, literally, that will prevent them from doing that. And again, like I said, talagang sinasagad nila yan.
Are you planning to propose amendments or a new legislation to regulate that?
Oh, yes, ma'am. We have, and we've continually proposed this as a problem to Congress. No? In fact, meron ng isang pending bill dun sa Senado, yung kay Senator Richard Gordon, kung saan gusto niyang mangyari, kapag file mo ng COC, dapat automatic official candidate ka na. That will help a lot because kung pagka-file mo pa lang official candidate ka na, maari ka nang makasuhan for premature campaigning. At kung nakasuhan ka for premature campaigning, pwede kang ma-disqualify. And since ang tagal ng pagitan between the filing in October and the start of the campaign period in February, may chance na matapos yung kasong disqualification bago mag-eleksyon. Ano? So this is something that the Comelec is supporting, of course, kasi nga, it will bring back rationality to the way we're doing things.
Yes.
Sir,
So, sa next Congress, balak nyo yung i-endorse again.
Again, yes ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
You're working on it already, di ba? Kasi sabi ng Supreme Court, in-interpret lang naman daw nila yung law eh. At wala.
Tama. Basically, nagtaas kamay ang Supreme Court dun eh.
So,
Opo.
kailangan talaga ng clarity in the law.
Yes po.
Okay.
Sir, I do understand your point about social media ads and the fight against fake news. Pero doesn't this also put you in a conundrum of sorts? Kasi in the end, the formal actual ads are easier to regulate because you can trace back ownership and production and production team. Yung mga influencer type of softer ads na hindi mo malaman kung bayad o hindi, sila yung mas prone at sila yung mas vulnerable to being abused in support of fake news. Kasi, true believer lang ako, so I can say whatever I want and all that. Wouldn't
true.
that possibly crowd out real ads that put out candidates' platforms?
Well, again, just to point out, at least as far as Google is concerned, they're not going to have political ads. But yes, yung mga websites that propagate fake news will still thrive, I think. Pero especially with the use of influencers that are, as you said, soft influencers, no? That's the landscape that we arrived on, right? That's the landscape that we arrived on. That's not a situation that's unique to the elections. That environment has been in existence since before the elections, and unfortunately, the Comelec is not really empowered to legislate against that. Right? Comelec cannot legislate. Comelec can only work within the boundaries of what's already allowed by existing law. So yun po yung challenge sa atin ngayon, no? And that's why we're working on like for example, like I said, monitoring expenses kasi yan, pasok yan sa mandate ng Comelec. Pwede yan. Nagbago lang ng konti yung medium, but there are no medium-specific prohibitions. For example, I'll give you an example. For example, on TV and radio, meron kang time limit kung gaano karaming ads ang ilalabas mo. Walang ganyan for social media. Sa print, meron kang limitation on how many times you can publish in a week. Again, walang ganyan sa social media or sa internet. So, ano gagawin ng Comelec? Again, this is not Comelec not caring. This is Comelec not being empowered to do anything.
Balikan ko lang po yung sinabi nyo kanina. I'm trying to understand, how far you can push it with the social media platforms and digital platforms. Malinaw naman po yung sinabi nyo. These are not Philippine companies, so you can't actually compel or mandate them to do anything. What about just having a little bit more transparency on what kind of spending is going on in there relative to can you go that far?
Yes, in fact, that's one of the things that's basically the hallmark of our cooperation with Facebook is that they are giving us access to their political ads library. They're helping us learn how to use the API so we can get more information out of that particular database. And all of these platforms are complying with our directive for them to issue summaries of all of the ads placed by the candidates during the campaign period. So we are starting somewhere, and it's a good cooperation that we had since 2019.
But then again, I would imagine that the dilemma comes in with spending done not by official candidate accounts.
Yes, this is still a challenge. It's still something that we're still studying to find out how we can solve. But again, parang ano yan eh, parang we run into a wall every time because there is no law. So mahalaga talaga magkaroon ng batas para malagyan na ng struktura itong paggamit ng internet for political campaign.
But you believe there is a way to cast a wider net beyond what can be directly and officially associated with candidates and their campaigns. You believe that as you continue to talk with these platforms and to ask for transparency on election-related spending, it is possible to make that definition a bit wider, para we can still track spending and trace it hopefully to specific accounts.
Absolutely, there should be a way to do that. No? Hindi naman to kumaga, this is not some sort of big secret operation that's happening. It's just a question really of definition and ultimately monitoring.
Director, maiba lang ako ng konti, no?
Yes,
We had the former Chief Legal Counsel Salvador Panelo last week, and meron siyang sinabing intriguing eh. Sabi niya, dahil magwi-withdraw si Senator Bongo, President Duterte will name another administration standard bearer, and it will most likely come from the same party, pero it will not be among the current crop of candidates daw for president.
Substitute daw.
Possible daw to if you will move the deadline for substitution. Is that a plausible scenario?
Lipas na po yung deadline for substitution eh. So we would not be moving it if we did it now. It would be resurrecting the period for substitution, and that's not something that we're empowered to do. No, wala po tayong kapangyarihan gawin yan. No? Ang sabi ng batas, meron tayong period for substitution, lipas na po yung oras na yon. At kung mag-withdraw man ang kahit sinong kandidato ngayon, voluntarily, hindi na siya pwedeng i-substitute.
Ang argument niya, it will be unfair daw to deprive a party of representation.
Eh di wag mag-withdraw yung kandidato nila.
Sorry, sir.
Okay.
Well,
It
sir,
seems self-evident to me.
yes, sir. Sir, just to push his argument further a bit, kasi, well, he was a presidential chief legal counsel. Tapos ang sasabi niya kasi, the Supreme Court actually gave the Comelec the authority to set the deadline for the substitutions. I think in the Omnibus Election Code, wala naman talaga dun sa, wala nakaset na deadline for the substitution na voluntary. I think until election day pa nga eh. It's just the Supreme Court gave Comelec authority to set the deadline for substitution na voluntary because of the automated elections. In which case, Panelo was arguing that since it is Comelec that set the deadline, therefore Comelec can also move the deadline.
But why would
I can see your eyebrows. Okay.
But why would we? I mean, that I think would be a very, very hard sell. Kasi tapos na yung period eh. And everyone else abided by it. But why should there be a special case now? I see no plausible reason for that.
Yung withdrawal ni Senator Bongo, sabi niya kahit hanggang May daw, he can withdraw, which is true, no?
Yes.
Kaya you will have to include him in the ballot. Hindi
Yes.
ba may option kayo to declare him na lang a nuisance candidate? Dahil meron naman siyang open declaration public eh. I'm sure it's recorded by everyone. I'm withdrawing. Pwede ba siyang i-declare based on that statement?
Ang problema kasi, ma'am, is that it's not a statement under oath eh. So he can later on deny it and say, no, I didn't mean that. And in fact, a lot of these candidates have done that during the filing, no? Sabi nila, yes, placeholder ako, and then kinabukasan, hindi pala. Ganyan. So as long as it's not under oath, you really can't hold them to it.
Okay. Sir, ay punta naman tayo dun sa mga kampanya. I mean, do we have control over this? Yung mga rally and so on, mga motorcades, and more importantly, yung crowds, the crowds gathering and really being drawn to the candidates. What's your sense of it? I mean, do we just swallow and accept this, that this is really already a preview of how the campaign is going to run, COVID or no COVID, Omicron or no Omicron?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, we're thankful that other agencies have started weighing in on this issue, albeit belatedly, no? Sobrang belatedly. Tagal na nating sinasabi na yung behavior ng mga candidates outside of the campaign period fall within the jurisdictions of existing authorities, like for example, the MMDA, the DILG, and thankfully now they're saying something about it. But I think they have to do more. It's not enough to be just laying out guidelines. There has to be some sort of monitoring and enforcement as well. It's just fair, right? Pagdating naman ng campaign period, we hope that the partnerships that we're building now with some of these agencies will kick in and be more, shall we say, more effective.
But enforcement is purely on the level of these agencies and LGUs for that matter. Is there anything that the Comelec itself, what's the proverbial whip that you can crack?
Well, right now, wala. We don't have a whip right now because we're not really empowered to do anything outside of the campaign period. But during the campaign period, obviously, we can talk about election offenses. We can talk about disqualification. We can talk about consequences to violating all of these health and security guidelines that are in place. So we can do that during the campaign period. That's the problem.
Balikan ko lang si Senator Bongo and his party.
Napo.
Any chance na medyo mapapaaga yung decision niyo on the PDP Laban dispute?
Hindi ko ho alam kung may effect yung nangyayari kay Senator Bongo, but certainly yung ating mga commissioners are double timing these decisions. No, we have our own self-imposed deadlines to meet, and that's really running out this week.
This week?
Opo, December 15 ang original na expectation namin paglabas ng official candidates, no? And part of the things that you need to clear up if you're gonna come out with a list of official candidates is, of course, kung sino may kona o wala. And that's one of the downstream effects of deciding the PDP Laban controversy.
So, sure na yun, more or less sure na within the week, mariresolve na yung PDP laban. This week.
Can we say optimistic?
Optimistically, within...
Yes.
Sir,
Okay.
does that same timeline apply to the petitions versus Bongbong Marcos, or that's a separate timeline altogether?
That's a separate timeline because a lot of those are disqualification cases. As far as the cancellation cases are concerned, well, yes, we expect them to be resolved fairly quickly. Pero yung the disqualification cases that have been filed against him, those can take a little longer because they will have to deal on other issues.
What does a little longer mean? 1 month? 2 months?
Wala po siyang timetable in the context of election day. Kasi a disqualification case can drag on, depende na lang on how the lawyers argue it. So, hindi ko masasabi kung gaano kabilis ma-resolve ba yung issue na yun.
Pero sir, yung cancellation po, when you say sooner, how do you qualify that? Are we talking about this week or next week? Or, kasi next week is ready, no?
Oo. Hopefully before we start printing ballots,
Yes.
Which is the end of the month.
which is January 15, thereabouts.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, Director James Jimenez of the Commission on Elections. Sir, maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Director.
Yes, sir.
Ingat po. That's all for this edition of the Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Ed Lingao, and we are One News.